think we're green. Perfect. Our scripture reading today can be found on page 661 of your Pew Bible. We are reading from the book of Matthew, and it's chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. This section is called Salt and Light. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven.
Well, we are in the middle, I guess just about to the middle of our series of testimonies that we're doing. And today is going to be a little bit different of a testimony. A lot of times when we share a testimony, it's a testimony of what God has done in a person or maybe a couple's life. And today we're going to do something a little bit different, because it's not just an individual testimony, but it's a testimony of what God is doing in an organization that we started that is called Immigrant Connection. And the reason we're doing this is because I think it is a great example of ways that I believe that the church can contribute to the flourishing of our society. Now, let me give you a little bit of biblical background and make some connections here for you. You see, throughout history, the church at various times has believed that the way that it ought to influence society is through political power or military power. And this has oftentimes caused Christians to form alliances with political parties, and too often, in the process, the gospel gets compromised. Now, I believe that the government is very important. In fact, the Bible tells us that government is ordained by God. Not any particular government, but government itself is ordained by God. But we are the church, and the church is different than the government. We have a different job. And I think that believers can advocate, and the church can come together to speak to government leaders. But ultimately, as the church, we have our own job to do. And this is one of our jobs. Back in the Old Testament, God called the people of Israel to be his people, the people of God. In order to do that, he called them through the law of Moses. He gave them the law of Moses. And here's what Exodus says was the purpose of giving the law of Moses. Moses is standing out in front of the people of Israel at Mount Sinai, getting ready to give them the law, and this is what he says. He says, "Now, if you obey me fully and keep my commandment, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Right? In other words, the people of God are called to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, as sort of the go-between, the mediators between God and the world. Well, a little bit later in Deuteronomy chapter 4, when God was reaffirming this covenant, reaffirming this law that he made with his people, they were getting ready to enter the promised land, and he added this about the law. He said, "Observe the law carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding among the nations, who will hear about all these decrees and say, 'Surely this is a great nation and a wise and understanding people.' What other nation is so great as to have their God near them, the way the Lord our God is near us whenever we pray to him? And what other nation is so great as to have such righteous decrees and laws as this body of laws I am setting before you today?" All right, so there's the background, okay? The purpose for the law, the purpose of living a certain way is to basically be witnesses to God and his goodness. All the other nations will look at how they live and say, God is something like that. Now, back in the Old Testament, one of the stipulations of the law, and even more importantly, one of the things that revealed God's character was care for immigrants. The NIV says foreigner, so if you look up immigrant, you won't see it. You'll probably see foreigner. Some translations will say alien, but basically that's what it's talking about. It means someone who is not native among your group. And God has special concern for them because foreigners are vulnerable. In fact, the Old Testament scholars have coined a term, the quartet of the vulnerable. The poor, the widow, the orphan, and the immigrant, or the migrant, the foreigner. And God tells his people that they will be judged according to how they treat the quartet of the vulnerable. Okay, now, that was just one of the ways that they were to be different from the people around them. While everyone else treated immigrants badly or treated them however they saw fit, the people of Israel were to be a witness to the character of their God by caring for the immigrant. Well, we believe that the church, as the continuation of the people of God, continues on those commands to witness to God's character. And we believe that one of the ways that we can witness to the character of God is to care for the foreigner and the immigrant among us. And the fact is migration has always been a part of human history. Look even back in the Bible and see how many of the main figures of Scripture were actually migrants themselves. Abraham, because he was called by God. Joseph, not by will, but he ended up being a migrant. The Israelites themselves were migrants, and God will continue to remind them of that throughout their history. Moses, the story that Allison just told, Ruth and Naomi were migrants. King David, did you know that? When he was running from Saul, became a migrant, needed help from foreign lands. Jesus was for a time when he fled to Egypt. And the disciples were almost all migrants because of the persecution that they underwent because of the gospel. Okay? Now, foreigners can be vulnerable in many ways. Some of it because of the language barrier, the culture barrier, and in fact, many of them are migrating because they are experiencing some kind of hardship or persecution. They're looking for a better life in a different land. Many of them, if they could, they would choose to stay where they are. They would rather be around their people, their family, their culture, their language. It's just more comfortable. But sometimes that's just not very possible. And there's something about home that just feels good, but sometimes home can't provide for you, and so you go somewhere else to find a better life for yourself. So, in the Old Testament especially, the law is full of instructions to not mistreat the foreigner among you. And he says actually to make provision for them. For instance, there are gleaning laws where it says to those who have fields of grain, they say, don't harvest all the way to the edge of the field. Leave the edges of the field for the foreigners to come along to be able to glean from them. For Israel, this also meant inviting them to Israel's feast. And they were commanded to welcome them essentially as native born. Okay, and it's all summed up in passages like Deuteronomy 10:19. You are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. Now what he's saying is that when they live the way God calls them to live, and to do so in his name, then the other nations will take notice. There is something different about these people. And not only will they say, what a great group of people, they will say, what a great God. In other words, right living points to God. A testimony is something that always points the way to Jesus. It's not about saying how great we are, but it's about saying how great our God is. It's about saying how great Jesus is. The Apostle Peter, in his epistle, picks up this theme from the Old Testament where he says this. See if you recognize this language. He's saying this to the church. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Okay, now of course we are called to be witnesses to Jesus in our personal lives, in the things that he has done for us. He tells his followers in Acts 1:8, "You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and even to the ends of the earth." And that, of course, means telling people about Jesus and what he's done for us. But alongside that, our words should also be accompanied by our deeds. Jesus spoke the Sermon on the Mount as a sermon to his followers. Okay, a recreation of the giving of the law at Sinai to show them what it means to be the reconstituted people of God. And he encouraged his followers to be distinct from the people around us when he says, "Let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." In other words, Jesus is saying that by doing good works, we bear witness to the greatness of our God. When the world sees us do good things, they start to, in their mind, they start to say things like, there's something about those people that remind me of Jesus. So like I said, today's testimony is going to be a little bit different. And in fact, I'm going to bring Emma and Elizabeth up here. So why don't you go ahead and make your way up here. Because almost 2 years ago, year and 3/4 or year and 2/3 ago, we started an organization called Immigrant Connection, whose mission is to ensure greater access to high-quality, low-cost immigration legal services in the United States. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to spend some time talking about this because I think oftentimes we need to be reminded of why we as a church are doing something like this. Like, why are we starting an organization that does legal work, right? Seems kind of strange, but the reason that we do it is because we want to be a witness to the people around us. And so I brought Emma and Elizabeth up here, and I'll explain to you why. And I see they have their Immigrant Connection swag on, too. I almost wore mine as well. I know, they give out a lot of swag. It's pretty awesome. We'll tell you about a little bit of the swag at the end here. All right, but we'll get into the why a little bit later. But since some of you are not familiar with what Immigrant Connection is, I want to make sure you know exactly what we're doing. And so I'm going to start with Emma, who is our site director. Could you explain to people who have no idea what it is, explain to them what Immigrant Connection is?
Yes. So we are an immigration law office, so fully legally accredited to be able to give immigration law advice, help file applications to USCIS. And the way that we went about that is the Department of Justice created a program that allows existing nonprofits to open up these offices.
And they created it like 1965, right? A long time ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. And so it's been around, and that gives churches a really unique place to be able to help in this way. So this program allows non-lawyers to practice immigration law. And so what that meant for us was we trained through an organization called Clinic. It's called Catholic Legal Immigration Network, something like that. They call themselves Clinic. And so we did a 20-some week course through them, learning the basics of immigration law. And then we did online shadowing and casework. And we're kind of guided by people in our Immigrant Connection network in that work. And then we were able to do a full week at another Immigrant Connection site in Indiana to shadow, do real-life work on real-life cases. And then after that, we applied with the Department of Justice, got our accreditation after 3 months, and then we were good to go. So for us, that means that we don't have law degrees, but so we're different from lawyers. The difference is that we can't go to court. We can give immigration law advice, help with applications to USCIS, but if somebody is in court, needs representation in front of a judge, that's the line. We can't do that. And then as far as the kind of where our office fits in the in the network of immigration law providers, especially in our area. I think things are pretty unique depending on the metro that you're in, the city that you're in, state. But for us, we are a low-cost clinic. We're not a free clinic. And this kind of puts us in a unique situation where all of the other organizations that are free have months and months long waiting lists to get in for basic things, to get in for representation from the lawyers that are on staff at that organization. And so this allows us to charge a low fee. For us, that's like to do a work permit. We charge $100, flat rate, $100. That's it. And I'd say our average for other like family petitions and stuff like that is like $250. So we really, compared to the thousands that you would have to pay when you're going to an immigration lawyer to do those same processes, we're very low cost.
I think the number that I had heard thrown out there is like about a tenth of the cost of
yeah, we aim to be about a tenth of the cost of what a lawyer would cost for similar processes. So that kind of puts us in a situation where even people who are low income are able to access our services. And so, yeah, we've kind of found our niche in this like network of offices and providers in the area, and that's kind of the idea that Immigrant Connection National was built with, was this idea of low cost, short wait times, easy access. So, yeah.
Do you know how many local branches there are of Immigrant Connection specifically right now? 40 some?
We're probably up to 40 at this point. Yeah. And I think between all the offices, that means over 100 DOJ accredited representatives. That's what our licensure is called. But then that is another 100 plus, even more support staff, admins, legal assistants, site directors, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Okay. So you've been open for a little bit under 2 years now. So how is it going? I think Elizabeth was going to field this question.
Okay. So we have, as of this week, we have done 214 legal consultations at our office. We've helped represent 179 different cases.
So this is since the beginning?
Since the beginning.
Since the beginning.
From the beginning. So we're sitting at like almost 200 cases. Right now, we're having 8 to 10 appointments almost every week, and Emma and I both work very part-time, so it's quite busy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going very well. We're very busy. We've served immigrants from 44 different countries of birth. So I think we have up there, you can see percentages of clients that we see. So it's not like we're seeing a whole group just from one single country. We're seeing people from all over the world coming with a huge diversity of stories and reasons why they end up at our office. But if you're interested, our most served countries have been Mexico, Ecuador, Afghanistan, Liberia, Somalia, and Ukraine. So those are the countries we've seen the most. And then you can see these are the different types of cases that make up most of our casework. So work authorizations are a thing that is a huge chunk. So when people are here, they're not allowed to just get a job. They have to have a certain status that gives them permission to work. And that's a huge complication for many clients. So that's what a lot of what we do. Sometimes people are citizens, but they don't have their paperwork to prove that they're citizens, and that is not something that is freely or easily given out. It is thousands of dollars, and it's very expensive and a huge wait time. So we've helped people who are already citizens prove that they are citizens. Also, family petitions are a big deal. Like, a lot of immigrants are separated from their family and separated for a long time from their family. And we find a lot of nonprofits in the area don't have funding to do that kind of work. They only can help people who are already here. They can't help them bring family members. And some people that are here have statuses that don't let them go back. So we're talking sometimes years, decades that people are separated from families. And that's been a huge part of our case. We've done surprisingly not as many citizenship applications as we thought, but it's still almost 10% of our work. And then humanitarian applications is a bunch of different situations to help people in especially dire and difficult situations. So it seems like every week we have more people coming through the door. Since we moved to the corner, we have a lot more walk-ins, and it's people from our neighborhood that have seen us and walked in and need help with stuff. And so it can always throw a little wrench in our day, but that's what we want. We want the neighborhood to know that we're there and to come in and get help on things. For those of you who don't know, in January we hired an admin assistant that has been huge in taking tons of work off of our desk and like catching things for us that we might miss. And not only
we were hoping, I was hoping that she could be here with us today, but she actually is the pastor of a church, of a Latino church, right, in Brooklyn Center. Yeah, and so she does this then part-time as well.
Yes.
And so she's busy on Sunday morning. So.
She also is getting her ordination this week, so she's extra busy this week.
Yeah.
So, yes, but she also has drummed up so much like business for our office too. When she doesn't have something to work on, she's on the phone drumming up business for us. So she
word of mouth is just so huge.
Yes, definitely. We've started to have some cases where it's like we did a case, and then we did her mother-in-law's case, and then her mother-in-law's brother came in, and it's been like, we're starting to see that, so people are that. And then one more thing I have some stories to share too, but I did want to say, for those of you who have been with from the beginning and care about the financial side, when we presented this to you, the idea was you gave us a certain amount of upfront cost to get started, and then we would make enough money through fees to keep it running. And I'm happy to share that most months we're there. The majority of months we're making enough money to pay not only our salaries, but Betty, our admin's salary also. So we're there. We're a fairly sustainable office. I mean, like the data is good. And when we bring up later opportunities to share and donate money, if I can just give a little context to that, whenever the administration makes a big changes in case types, we often have to deal with a couple months of, cases we thought were cases are no longer cases, or cases we thought were easy cases now take twice as many hours from us. So we do have months here and there, mostly because of law changes that are unanticipated, that kind of cause us a little bit of reset on that. Not like huge red lines, but a little bit. And then the other piece is that we're functioning, but we're at our capacity. And both of us are wearing a lot of hats, and I only have 8 hours a week to give to this office, so Emma's really wearing a lot of hats. And the only way that we can really long-term be sustainable is that we grow enough to eventually bring another person on to further spread the hats out, so there's not so much weight, especially on hers. So our fees are affordable and sustainable, but we're not charging enough to grow. And so part of when we ask for support, it's like you're investing in a sustainable thing, but it does that's where the support comes in.
Sustainability should come through fees. Growth comes through other external.
Exactly.
Finance,
Yes, for sure. And then if I can just give a couple stories to put with the numbers, a few faces. Many of you know Ashanafi, who's part of the Ethiopian Kalawet Church downstairs. He just got his citizenship this year, and so he was our first citizenship. Also, many of you know John Kaloff, and he is working on a green card extension with us, so he's been able to help. So we're still waiting on his application. Yes, he's here. And then a couple stories with that, you don't know the people, but we've had a young couple in their 20s, and they've known each other since childhood through church. They are engaged to be married, but she's in the United States, and the status does not allow her to travel back and forth. So they've been separated as an engaged couple, occasionally meeting in a third country, but and his visa just got approved this week, so he's going to be able to come here, and they're going to be able to get married. So that was very exciting. And then we have a citizen family with aging parents in their home country, and they did a petition for them, but as you can imagine, the pandemic threw a huge wrench in immigration along with everything else. and they got caught in immigration slowdowns for 5 years, and somehow in the midst of that, one visa came through and the other didn't. So this couple that has lived their whole lives together, one had to immigrate here and the other had to stay back. And so they came to us to try to help get the other spouse here, and we got the approval for that petition this month also. So they still have, they still have more Waite through the embassy, but they are on their way to not being separated anymore. And then at the same time as I want to celebrate the great things that are happening, I also just want to be realistic and share that there's like a lot of cases that we represent that are stuck in limbo for a very long time. They're unlikely to be approved because the laws just don't allow a pathway for them, or some that have approved applications, but there's been travel bans placed in place for their country, so they're just not allowed to come here and be together with their family. So there's celebrations, but there's also a lot of hard.
Yeah, and along with that, the new administration has cut a lot of jobs and things, and so the process is moving even slower now than what it used to. And so you see how difficult the situations can be. People get into really vulnerable position. I mean, can you imagine moving somewhere to get a better life for your family, but you're the only one who can move, and so you have to live separated like that, sometimes for years on end. As your children are little, you don't get to see your kids grow up and all of that, because it's not just a family, the whole family doesn't always get to immigrate together. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is how do we speed up that process so that families don't have to live so long apart from each other. Okay, so Immigrant Connection is not a political advocacy organization, okay? We are here to just do the business that we need to do of doing everything that we can to help people who are in vulnerable positions. But I think it is pretty common knowledge that the new administration has made it pretty difficult in many ways for immigrants in general. And of course, this is not unique to the United States. This is something that's happening all around the world where governments are clamping down on immigration, and sometimes for good reason. We think a government should be able to control its borders and keep its citizens safe and all of that. We don't know where that balance is, and so we're not going to tell you here's what the law should be or anything like that. We're just here to do the work, all right? But can you tell us about some of the significant changes that have happened just as we've started practicing over the last year and a half or so?
Yeah, I have 3 particular policy changes that have kind of really affected people in our office, and by extension, as Elizabeth said, kind of those changes affecting how long it takes us to do our job, if we're able to do certain types of applications that we were able to do before. So I'm just going to outline a couple of those really specific changes. One of them being that, so when somebody comes into the United States and applies for asylum, a clock starts the moment they submit that application. After 150 days, they're able to apply for a work permit. During that time that they are waiting, they are not legally allowed to work. Initially, the way that it was prior to, 2 weeks ago, I guess, is when this changed. That first application for a work authorization was free because you're not legally allowed to work. Where are you going to get the money to apply for this first work authorization? And so that was a lot of people. We were having people that came in, applied for asylum, coming from difficult circumstances, wanting to have this ability to work legally in the United States, care for their families. And they have now raised the fees. Each person now has to pay $550 to the government to be able to work legally in the United States.
For something that used to be free.
For something that used to be free, it now costs $550. Yeah. So practically, this means I've had families come in the last few weeks. I sit them down, we have a consultation. They're eligible to apply, but they need to wait until they can find enough friends and family that are able to offer up enough money to help them, or they need to decide we have money for one person to be able to work. Who is going to apply for this application? And so this affects them in that they're not legally able to work for that amount of time. They have to find a place to get that money. This also affects case flow for our office. This means that less people are able to do this really simple application. And so that's kind of how that's affected them and us. This one has kind of been, it's a little older, but it's kind of, all the effects are kind of catching up kind of down the line of this original change. But we talked about this when it first started happening. All refugee services were paused, essentially. So we have not welcomed any new refugees into the United States, and I didn't look up the date what that was. It's been a couple months that we have not resettled any new refugees into the United States.
This is something that we talked about a while back when it first happened, because Arrive Ministries is a refugee resettlement organization, and I think they've had to, if I remember right, because all the funding has been cut off, I think they've had to basically
furloughed
stop
a lot of their employees.
Yeah.
And so this also means that refugees that are currently here in the United States, after they arrive here, after 1 year, they're allowed to apply for their green card. They are no longer processing green card applications for refugees. And so this was a big one for us last year. We were having a lot of refugees coming in, big families, all applying for their green card all at the same time. And now they can still apply. The government will take their application, but it will not be processed, and that is indefinite. There has not been any word as to when that will get started up again.
And refugees are a status of people who have been vetted and actually invited by our country to come and to be in our country, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're not entering, they're not undocumented, anything like that. We actually vetted them, and we invited them to come and told them, you can come and be here, and actually we'll give you some support for a certain amount of time and all of that. And when that order came down, it was just stopped. There were people who were sitting on airplanes in an airport somewhere ready to come. They'd sold their home, they'd sold everything that they had in that country, and suddenly we said, nope, you can't come. So this is, kind of some of the things that are happening.
And so, and this has also been, and after somebody comes as a refugee, you're allowed to apply for your immediate family, spouse and children in your home country if they didn't come with you. This also means those applications are not getting processed. So people with spouses, minor children in other countries, that is not getting processed. They are not getting reunited, and it is indefinite. We do not know when that will be brought back. And then the final one is, so temporary protected status has been canceled for many countries. This means the U.S. had decided that there were certain countries where even though you're here and maybe you don't have a green card, you were here as a student or you were here on another temporary status, the U.S. decided it's not safe for you to go home to your country. We will give you a work permit and protection from deportation until we decide that your home country is safe for you to return to. And that has been canceled even though country conditions have maintained their difficulty or even worsened in some cases. So we've got people who all of a sudden are unable to work, unable to legally be here in the U.S., but their option is to go home, and their home is not any better than it was when they were given that status. Yeah. So I guess, so the difficult thing, and I guess, I'll kind of go into this next one. So it's impacted us in the way that we're able to offer these services that were once available and maybe now they're not, or they were once accessible by price and now they're not. And this also means that, and I highlighted those policy changes in particular because they had to do with our humanitarian statuses that we are giving to people that we're saying your home country is not safe to be in, and we have given them an idea of, a time that we're allowing them to be here and be safe and work. And And there are things about immigration and how we do the law that need to be reshaped and rethought. And any person that practices immigration law will tell you that. There is so much that needs to be rethought. But there are a lot of things that are being changed, and I think we're not thinking about maybe how those are affecting the most vulnerable in our country. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do, again, we're not an advocacy organization. We're not saying, here's what laws we need to pass. There are lots of places that are doing that, some of them Christian organizations and all of that. That's not the route that we take. We just want to be here to help those who are vulnerable, because we believe that that's part of our calling as followers of Jesus. Okay, so we talked about why we're doing this as a church. So I want you to talk a little bit. Why are you doing this? Why did you personally decide to do this? And you can talk about whatever reason you would like.
I think the first answer is just that, like, I was at the meeting where it was brought up, and I was like, oh, I can do this. Like, I speak Spanish.
And you guys had started coming like 2 weeks before that, right?
But I speak Spanish. I'm a stay-at-home mom with some flexibility in my schedule and wanting to make a little bit of side money to help support our family. And this is this was a flexible job that allowed me to do that and use my Spanish skills. So I think it's nice as a person, when you're sitting there thinking about what you're going to do and someone presents to you an opportunity that fits your skills and fills a need, like that is a great thing, for me. So that is like, I can do it. And someone offered me something that fit my schedule and helped me out as well as others. So it's great. But I think I've said that when I talk to this church and when I talk to people about the work that we're doing, I don't feel like I have to convince this church that like immigrants matter or that we should care about them. I think for the most part, our church, on the continuum of ways that people can react to immigrants, like I think we've made it to the point of understanding that like God calls us to care for the vulnerable. But there's like this other piece that sometimes for myself, and I'm going to assume some people in this room, is like, do we look at them as like just people in need of our help or saving, or do we recognize how like they're an integral part of our community and we need them also? And so being someone who worships in this neighborhood and lives in this neighborhood and now works in this neighborhood too, like I see this work as a genuine investment in my community. Like our community is better off when people have access to authorization to work, when people get to be with their families. Like all of those things make our community better. And immigrants make our community better. Like I see people coming through our office every day, and the commitment they have to the community, the commitment they have to taking care of their family is just like, it's something we need and will make our communities better. And so I think, there's that piece of us helping people who are in need, but there's also that piece of recognizing what we have to gain. And I see that as an investment in our community. And I think we're going to come back to this in a second after Emma shares. But I think also just if you look at the United States, a lot of the greatest revivals and church growth is happening in immigrant churches. I think our church will benefit. We have a number of immigrants in this congregation that make our congregation what it is. And so I think,
So I was going to say this a little bit later, but as long as you talked about that. You've probably seen the statistics that the church in America is declining numerically. That is happening almost entirely in the white church. That is not the case in immigrant churches. The immigrant churches in the U.S. are blowing up. They're going crazy. And so there's a sense in which I think as white American Christians, we need the immigrant church. We do, because they make us better. In fact, we're going to do a baptism a little bit later, and all of them are the children of first-generation immigrants. Every single one that we're baptizing today. So it's not an us and them. It's not American and immigrant. it's follower of Jesus and our brothers and sisters, right? 83% of immigrants that are coming into the United States are Christian, right? So we're welcoming our brothers and sisters into the United States.
I think 83% from Latin America.
Or sorry, from Latin America. 61%, I think, yeah. 61% overall are Christian, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, going back into like my why, again, like starting on the most practical level, just the way that Immigrant Connection National kind of set up their program. And I was in a similar situation. Well, you had been doing some work here and there. I had not worked in a few years, and they made it easy and accessible for a mom to kind of start this work. And yeah, the training, the school was free to me. Didn't have to like go get a 4-year degree and pay for all of that. So that was really good.
And I'm amazed at how much you guys know about immigration law. Like the things that you pull out and all of these loopholes. And all, this is a complicated system of law. And these guys, my head spins every time I hear them talk about it, and to hear them talking with each other about, well, what about this case, and what about in this case, and what about this exception, and what about this form, and all the numbers and all that. I'm just blown away at how much these guys know about the immigration law system, which is incredibly complicated.
Yeah. So then, on a more personal note, I'm married to an immigrant. We went through a lot to get to where we currently are. And so I'd say I have a little more understanding maybe than the average American-born citizen of what that system looks and feels like on the receiving end. And so I was excited to be able to be a part of an office to be a person specifically also like who came at these cases with an understanding of what they might be feeling, or to the best of my ability as a person who is not an immigrant herself, to be able to know kind of what that system felt like. And then kind of going back to what Corey was talking about I really enjoy all those little details and talking and figuring it out. It's a puzzle, and it's fun when you're thinking through all those little details and how you might be able to get around X, Y, Z. Yeah, it's really, it's outside of like the connection with immigrants and being able to, make a difference in my community. There's aspects of this job that are, just enjoyable and fun and a puzzle and interesting for my brain.
Fits your skill set.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
definitely.
Yeah, one of the great things about being a part of a network like Immigrant Connection is at the last conference they shared a statistic that any organization, any nonprofit can open a clinic under this program. They're not all Immigrant Connection. Immigrant Connection is a specific one, but those who practice on their own, they go through all the training and start practicing, and on average, they do so for about 11 months, and then they're done. Having Immigrant Connection Network as moral support, they have an immigration lawyer on retainer. They have other DOJ reps that have a lot more experience too, to be able to call at any moment and talk to, and all of that is just a lifesaver. And to my knowledge, neither of you are thinking about quitting anytime soon, right? Yeah, okay. And you've already outlasted the 11 months, so that's great. So that, and then, having it be a part of your skill set is a big part of it as well. But yeah, just really, really great, really, really great stuff. Okay, I'm going to skip down a little bit. Emma, you were going to say something, you wanted to maybe talk a little bit more about, like, what is the benefit of, because it's not just about, we're helping those poor immigrants, right? It's they have something to offer us as well. So Emma, you've had some experience through doing this work that I think is really, really valuable to think about as well.
Yeah, and so we're like talking about how we're gaining from immigrants as far as like numbers in the church. We're gaining in our communities by having more people in a strong workforce. We're gaining from having people who are committed to families. We're gaining a lot. But one thing that I kind of over the last number of months have kind of found myself thinking about more is the gains that I have received from seeing how immigrants, especially people who have been through difficult circumstances and times, think about God and how their faith sustains them. And this has been a lifesaver in times where I am frustrated, either with like the government or how I hear people talk about immigrants in the news or on the street, or how I maybe hear really negative things in like certain American churches who tie themselves to politics in a way that it hurts me. I have found a lot of hope and faith in being able to lean on an understanding of God that more closely reflects how immigrants see God caring for them as they go through life. And so I'm able to kind of lean on that faith as I kind of have my like wrestling and my doubts and my hard times of not understanding why things are going the way they're going. I see people going through difficult things and believing in the daily bread that God gives, and they believe that God will carry them through every single thing that happens to them, whether things turn out the way they want them to or not. And that is, it's not that I don't see it in Americans, I see it in a unique way in immigrants. And it's really great to see, and it's life-giving. And it's helped me kind of get through some of the harder times in the office.
Yeah, you talked about it as borrowing faith.
Yes, borrowing faith in that way.
Yeah, because I think as Americans, there are so many other things we can put our faith in. We have so many things that we can fall back on that we can convince ourselves, I don't really need God. I don't really need his daily provision. But when you get into difficult circumstances, like many of these immigrants who are coming to see us get into, you really start to see, all right, what are you really putting your faith in? And it can be just incredibly inspirational for us to be able to see them just trust God in everything. And a lot of times it just takes all the faith that you have in order to do that. But he comes through for them. And it's an inspirational thing for those of us who are tempted to rely on all of the other advantages that we have in life. Okay, we got to wrap this up. So I think Elizabeth was going to answer this one. How can we pray for you and for Immigrant Connection?
Yeah. Well, I think for us and for our office, it's really hard work right now. It's always heavy holding these kinds of stories with families separated and leaving homes. But given some of the current situation we've talked about in rhetoric, I think it's especially heavy, and our jobs are changing really fast. What's true one week is not true the next week when I come into the office. And like, if I can just give an example, the change that we said about the $550 for the work authorization happened while I was on a 2-week vacation, and I spent part of my vacation trying to call clients and get applications in before the fee went into effect. Because I'm sitting there thinking that they don't have the money to pay, and so it's heavy. And that's not even the heaviest of stories that we hold. Like, money is heavy, but it's money. But like when you're talking about family separation. So we would appreciate for us prayers for some wisdom to navigate complex changing laws and give wise advice. It is really hard to give good advice right now. And you don't want to be pulled into the scariest things we see on the news that may or may not be true, but you want to give wise advice to people. We would love to have balance to be able to do our work well and then also have breaks when we're not thinking about it and not holding that weight. And then we'd like our office to have increased income from cases or donations and things that would allow us to grow the number of hours. So Emma's actually paid for the number of hours she's working, but also so we could get someone else on staff and spread out some of the responsibilities, because it's really like we're holding more hats than we're supposed to do, And then we have a conference coming up in September. And I think, Immigrant Connection conference is usually excellent, but I think there's a lot of heaviness for everyone working in immigration law right now. And so I'm just hopeful that this will be an encouraging and uplifting time, despite being in a room with a lot of people experiencing this. Okay. And then obviously it goes without saying that if this work is heavy and difficult for me as a person who's not personally impacted by it, just my job, it is like extremely difficult for a lot of our clients and immigrants that are living this daily, and it's their cases and their families and their lives. For me, it's my work. And so we'd like prayer that our clients' cases would be approved, that processing times would get slower, Sorry. No, that processing times would get faster, that the wait would be shorter. Prayers that families could be together. We've got a lot of clients right now just desperately waiting and calling for some sort of update of what could happen with their family member, and we want families to be together.
Yes, we do.
And then prayers for our government that they would make wise and humane immigration laws and treat immigrants with respect and dignity.
Yeah, great. Okay, so if you want to help, obviously pray. You can give. If you would like. Now, giving to Immigrant Connection, the organization, it's not a desperate need right now. Our cases are doing well. Some of you do give regularly, and if this is something that really, tugs at your heart, if this is something that you can give regularly, you can go onto our church website, and then there'll just be a drop down for Immigrant Connection. All of that money that you give to Immigrant Connection will go to Immigrant Connection to help support the operations of Immigrant Connection. Also, if you want some swag, we have Immigrant Connection mugs. And they're very expensive mugs, $25. But if you give $25, you can get one of those sweet mugs. I mean, it's one of my favorites. So anyway, but the more important thing is you're supporting this work that's happening. Also, I wanted to let you know something that the board did this past week. Every week, many of you give to a benevolence fund, and benevolence is money that is given specifically to help people who are in need, people who are in vulnerable situations. That's the case for someone who's in our congregation. If you run into a time and you can't pay your bills or something like that, reach out to us as a church. We have money that's set aside. People give regularly, and we have money that's set aside specifically for that. So if you run into a hard time and you need something, reach out to us as a church, and we can help you out. And then, if you want to pay it back in time or whatever, then, we'd be happy to have you do that. But we've actually had some benevolence that's been building up, and every time our benevolence fund gets really big, I start going, man, why are we holding on to this? Okay, this is meant to be helping people, and so let's do this. And so I went to board meeting, and I suggested, hey, how about this? A lot of these fees are going up for Immigrant Connection. We have to be careful for this. We don't want word to get out that you can have this work done for free and all of that. So we'll have to be careful about how this is. But we see all of these fees going up. It's becoming even harder for immigrants to be able to do the paperwork that they want to do. So how about if we take $2,000 and from the benevolence fund and put it into Immigrant Connection benevolence fund, okay? So in other words, this is not for operations for Immigrant Connection. This is specifically to help people that they are having a hard time paying for the paperwork from the government that they need, and we're going to help them do that. And the board said no. They said, no, let's give $5,000 to it. And so, yeah, that's worthwhile, isn't it? All right, so for those of you who are giving to benevolence, all right, it is benevolence. We're just putting Immigrant Connection in charge of it because it is helping people who are in need, all right? And so also, we have an awesome board. I love our board. even if they disagree with me from time to time. So this is good disagreement. Okay, so anyway, I just want to let you know that we still have plenty of money in benevolence, by the way, but we were able to give $5,000 to Immigrant Connection to help immigrants to be able to pay for the paperwork that they need. Okay, I think Emma and Elizabeth will be around after service. You're not planning on ducking out right away. And that. So if you have more questions for them, would love for them to be able to answer all of those as well. But thanks so much for your support. You guys have been so generous, so supportive in so many ways of Immigrant Connection, and we just want to grow this ministry, and there are other sort of wraparound ministries that we still would like to do, whether it's citizenship classes or English speaking classes or just fill any of these other needs that are happening as well, and we feel confident that you guys will make that happen. So let me close us in prayer. Let's have the worship team come up. We'll close out our service. Heavenly Father, we are grateful for you, and we thank you that you have given us the ability to witness with our mouths, but also with our deeds and with our money and all of this. God, I pray that as people from the outside, I don't care what their politics are, I don't care what they think about the immigration system or anything like that, but I just pray that they would look at us and say, what an amazing God that is, who cares for even the most vulnerable in our society. I pray that we, as individuals and as an organization, as a church, as Immigrant Connection, that message that we do this in the name of Jesus comes through loud and clear. I pray that you would continue to give us favor as we work these cases, continue to build Emma and Elizabeth's knowledge, and I pray for their mental and emotional and spiritual health, that you would just encourage them and just to let them know that they are doing your work. And so, God, we just pray for your blessing, your continued blessing on this church and on Immigrant Connection as we seek to be your witnesses in this neighborhood, in our country, and in our world. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.